Before we actually start this piece, just want to mention that this is another part of the installation that I thought I was going to end up paying someone to do because I thought it was too hard to do. I thought it was above my head, and yet with all the help of so many people on YouTube and research, I've realized I can do it. Now I've done the propane installation and I'm about to do the plumbing installation, and then guess what next happens? Electrical installation, which I can promise you is the most, for me, terrifying part of the whole van build. But I'm at the point where I think I'm going to do that too. I guess I'm saying this to let you know that there are resources out there to show you how to do this. I am building the entire van from YouTube. Entire van. The whole build. And what I'm endeavoring to do here is to show you from a novice's perspective how to do some of these things, and then my expertise is design. And just show you, to try to show you that you can do this too. You need to be patient with yourself, you need to be thorough, and you need to know that it's probably going to take 2 to 3 times longer than a normal professional. So it's going to be a lengthy process, but incredibly satisfying. Like every time you finish a little sub-project, yay, little celebration, celebrate for yourself, create some little celebration markers for yourself in the process. So let's get to it. So let's just start with the tanks here. Okay, so here's the big giant 30-gallon tank that, as you can see, has a wheel arch cut out of it. And then you can see the difference in size between that and my little grey water. Just enough to carry grey water out where you're not supposed to dump it. One of the things I had to get my head around, which was there's all these different holes in these tanks and what was going to be used for what. And so there's some on this side, there's one on the top, and there's a bunch on this side. And that's going to be dependent on where your tank is mounted and what is going into it and what is coming out of it. So for me, what I'm going to use is this one as my gravity feed water inlet. Okay. This is going to be the air vent, which is essential because as you're putting water into here, you have to push air out somewhere, okay? This is going to be where the pump is mounted, okay? The shore flow pump, which pumps the water, and this is going to be the drain that is only used if you winterize or want to clean your tank, so you need to make sure you have valves around that. I am also going to use this one here for for the pressured water inlet, okay? That's just how I want to do it for various reasons, okay? And so this is a Northwest Conversions, giving them a little shout out because they make these beautiful over the wheel arch water tanks. So as you can see, I've decided to put some of my plumbing pieces in there just to play around with what sizes they are and what I need. And otherwise, what I want to start to show you is all the rest of the pieces that are required to get this working. I just wanted to give you a feeling for the parts you're going to be looking for, and that you should research these first, purchase them first, get it all on site as much as possible before you start doing your installation. So you're not doing 100 trips to and from Home Depot. You can get these in advance whilst you're doing other trips. Home Depot, Amazon, Lowe's, etc. in America at least. So where should I start? Firstly, there's a whole lot of different gauges of tubing, PVC tubing, some of it with this great ribbing which makes it super strong. Okay, I love this stuff. I've got 1/2 inch internal, 3/4 inch internal, 1/2 inch internal on this big gauge for my gravity feed. So getting all those pieces together is one piece. Then as you can see here, there's just a whole lot of blue and red PEX. The red is for hot water, the blue is for cold water. Some people just use white for all of it. This is so that we know which is which. PEX. And then we have a PEX cutter, which is important because you have to actually cut your PEX really clean. And then this is also important for PEX because you need to make sure that there's no burrs on it before you use your shark bite, which is what I've chosen to use. You can use different methods to connect your PEX, but I want to use shark bite. So I've got valves in shark bite, I've got straight connectors like this. I've got 135-degree angle connectors like this. It's all 1/2 inch, by the way. 1/2 inch PEX is all you need. Elbow connectors, 3-way joint pieces, straight couplings, and then also bends, because sometimes you want to bend it around a corner rather than a 90-degree. It just means the water's flowing better, right? So these are called 2. So that's the shark bite and the PEX part of the story. And then we start to look at the pump. So this is my Flow. I'll give you the model number 2088 pump, highly recommended pump. Okay, so that's an essential part of this build. Decided to put in an accumulator tank. Some do, some don't. I decided to. I have the space for it. It all helps keeping it quiet. You know, there's reasons to do these things. This is to keep it quiet. This is to take pressure off the pump, to keep its lifespan, etc., etc. And then there's all these little components that go with your Flow pieces, okay? Just these little adapters, right? Another part of the Flow thing, again, this is not as essential, but it's what's called a Flow silencing kit. Again, it's to keep the process as silent as possible. It's also just lengths of tubing, right? So that doesn't hurt. So that's all those pieces. This is the water level sensor. Okay, this is there's a main brand that people use, but they didn't have my size, so I've gone with this one. I'll put the link to both below. This basically, we drill into the top of the tank, we plunge it in. It has a float that goes up and down on top of the water level that then gets registered here, okay, with my simple little water gauge. And this is going to be an efficient system. Obviously, this needs to get electrically plumbed in too. So that's an important part of this. Also, we have just little accumulators, okay, like this. This is like silt accumulators. You put them in various places throughout your plumbing. I'll show you when I get to that. I've got a lot of valves. This one's going to be for my drain inside the tank that you obviously need to close when you're not using it. I'm also going to use pretty much the same thing to release the water in my grey water tank. Then you've got elbows of various descriptions, okay, 1/4 inch, a bunch of these adapters, a lot of these little stainless steel compression that you just screw on to tighten piping like this around these adapters. These are really essential. And this stuff is really cool, Plasto joint stick, essential for, again, for stopping water leaking at screw joints, okay, at any of these pieces that are screwing in. And then if I end up needing it, which I will for outside, this is the Oatly Handy Pack, which is purple primer and PVC clear cement. Super important part of the things you're gonna need, okay? But otherwise, I am good to go. So today what I'm hoping to do is to do some indoor work on my tank and try to get some of these pieces installed to make sure that then I can actually install it into over the wheel arch, because there's a few things that I need to strap it in place to secure it, and then I have another piece of wood to go on top to make sure I secure it in place. But once I've done this piece, then I can start actually doing the plumbing in situ, because then I'll know the length that I need to be cutting for my PEX, cutting for my tubing, etc., etc. But I've got plenty of components, and Home Depot has such a wonderful return policy that you can buy more than you need and then just return them, okay? So here goes, this is my day. You gotta cut all these out. They come plugged in. Look, you could probably use a one of those barrel drill bits, but I'd be afraid of it blunting the thread here. So I'm going for box cutters. I'm just going to drive a screw into the middle of it, so I've got something to hold on to so that the plug doesn't fall inside. I don't want it to fall inside. Okay, This time it worked. Yay. All right. The next thing I have to do is actually get these plugs out. I had to go and get a special 3/8 inch hex piece for this. But this is to unscrew these plugs. I can reuse them for my other tank, but that was super easy, just had to be done. And there's one on the other side too. So I'm going to try to take this step by step. I've noticed many people on YouTube, maybe because they're already experts in things, they assume things that us novices know that we don't. And so take you step by step. So what I'm doing at the moment today is I'm going to be installing a few things out here that are going to be harder to get to once I've put it inside the van and inside the cabinet. So the first thing I'm doing basically is I'm going to be installing the drain. So if you saw before, I'd actually marked, I've decided of all the holes, there's 4 on this side, 1 on the top, 3 on the other side, which holes are for what. This hole here at the bottom, which makes sense, is for the drain. And so there's a few things that I've found out. You don't, on plastic components, you don't use the Teflon. So this Plasto joint stick is a lubricant. So what I'm using today is I've got my piping. My piping's actually inserted in the van. This is just the same internal diameter. So when you start to go for either braided or unbraided plastic PVC tubing, you're going to see braided, unbraided, and you'll see interior dimension and out exterior dimension. And they'll go ID, interior dimension, OD for outer dimension. And I need everything to have a 1/2 inch interior dimension for this, for most of these pieces. Okay, so I'm just using this. So otherwise, so I've got this cool stuff, Plasto joint stick. I've got these little 1/2 inch plastic drain extenders. I actually got this in the, what do you call it, water irrigation section of Home Depot. I've got a valve because I obviously want to turn it off so it's not draining all the time, but I need to be able to turn it on when I need to drain it. So that goes on that side, that goes to the drain, and then this can go straight into the tube with a stainless steel attachment to it, and that's going to be draining out of the van, so that's super easy. So let's start with this today. And just while I've got you, when you use this lubricant, you only put it on the male side of the thread. You don't want it on the interior of any of the piping. It could screw up your pump. You want it on the male. This is a male component, okay? You only want to put it on the thread of the male component, okay? You can just see me running it around the male parts here. And we have that piece. It's the drain. Super simple. It's probably where we start with this one. It's very simple. So this will go on here with a stainless steel collar tightened around it once I put it in the van. Before I proceed, I just wanted to say again that with these main systems that I've been installing, propane, water, electricity, I've been following the Far Out Ride folks from Canada. These 2 fabulous engineers who, with their fabulous engineering minds, have put together all sorts of schematics and, you know, step-by-steps. So I'm going to put a link below into their website. I find them really helpful. There's so many people though that I find super helpful. The folk from Mathers on the Map, 70 Savage, Kenzie West. I mean, there's just so many. I'll have to do just a video on who to thank who've helped me along the way. Just wanted to go back on something I was saying with the water tank thing. I want to read something from the Far Out Ride folk, okay? So for all threaded plastic fittings, do not use Teflon tape or Teflon paste. These are lubricants, not sealants. I said the wrong thing a minute ago, okay? And they will promote over tightening, which leads to cracks and leaks, okay? You don't over tighten, finger tighten plus 1 or 2 turns using this stuff. Use plastic safe thread sealant, such as Plasto joint stick. Don't worry, it's not permanent. It's a paste that does not dry and can be removed easily, okay? Then they also added, we do not use the thread sealant on the shore flow fittings attached to shore flow appliances, okay? those fittings are a bit like a hose fitting. I think they've got a gasket inside there, so it actually seals against the rubber gasket. I think that's why they say that. So I just wanted to make sure that was I was saying the right thing. Yeah, the far out ride folk are fantastic, super fantastic. Kevin from Mathers on the Map, Kevin 70 Savage. Trying to think of the other gal that I follow. There's so many great people, but anyway, back to this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is fit the inlets. I'm still doing the tank side installation at the moment, which is I'm wanting to install all these parts on the tank, in the tank, including the water level thing, before I install it in the van. It's just how I wanted to do it because it's kind of tight in there, obviously. My tank, I've actually got an exterior flap that has both a gravity fed and a water hose connector, so I can either connect a hose or I can gravity feed, or I could even connect things to a hose into the gravity feed. So there's many ways I can get water into the tank, is what I'm trying to say. And I've decided to do this sort of gravity fed heavy thick hose into this position. I'm going to create the hose connection to the other side of the tank, and then connect that to my inlet. And I'll show you at that end when we get to installing it. But that's what we're doing now, is I'm going to install this on the tank, and I'm going to install this on the other side of the tank. So this is going to be the gravity fed hose, per se. So all we've got here is a 1.5 inch inlet. It's where I want it to inlet, okay? And then we've got this nice 1.25 inch hose, I think it is. And then we just got one of these metal collars that will tighten around it. So I'll be using the Plasto joint seal on the male thread into the tank, and that's what I'm doing now. All over the thread. Now I pop it in the tank. So there we go. That collar's a bit big, but they're a bit hard to find at the moment, so but it's on super tight. So we've got that, the Plasto joint seal, and we've got this already on the tank side, and now I'm gonna install the other side. Okay, so this is going to be the pressurized hose, as in I can connect this to pressured hose mains. And so what I've worked out how to do, this is kind of a tight spot in the van, so to make this work I'm actually using SureFlow bends and straights to make this piece work. So we're going to have it go in there, we've got a SureFlow elbow, and then we're going to have a piece of this attached with a collar, okay? And then we're going to have to cut the pipe, because I actually want to put a valve, a ball valve in this one. Okay, so I'm going to put a ball valve in there, which is going to have these on each side. And then at the other end of the hose to the van is actually another elbow like this. And that should work. I'm using this braided, it's called braided PVC, because it's very strong. It can take pressure into it. It's just important, like the first thing or the second thing I showed you was how to do a vent. You must vent the tank, because as you're pushing water into it, you have to be allowing air to be pushed out of it. So that's why the vent is a really important part of this. But I'm just going to fit all this together now at the tank end. Side of the pressurized water inlet, the tank side is done. That's going to curve around this way to the inlet, the water inlet. Okay, so now we're plumbing the tank side of the pump assembly, okay? And essentially what I've decided to do is have the pump and an accumulator tank. The accumulator tanks aren't expensive altogether, and it helps to keep the system quieter and smoother. Yep. And so essentially what I'm doing at this end, let me show you. What we're doing here is, because I want to pump from this side of the tank, I'm just reduced this down to the 1/2 inch. So I just got this fitting, reducing it to a male-to-male coupling, okay? But then I'm going to put in a little silt remover thing. I might use a few of these en route, okay? From that, we'll go to the first part of the silencing, okay? That will then go to here, to the actual pump. And then I kind of need to get that on situ. I'm going to do this bit up once I've installed this, because I need to see distances here. This should be vertical, that will be horizontal. There's another silencing length, and then I might be using some other lengths of hose or PEX from here to get it to the rest of my system. Okay, so that's what I'm installing now. That is this side of the tank installed. It's upside down because I turned it upside down, but we're good to go to actually move this stuff, move the tank into the van. So now I'm going to install the tank sensor over here. So this little float will float up and down and send the signal to this through to the gauge. Yeah, I have read my instructions and they don't say very much, frankly. So there's a lot of different brands, but this one's one I've used. I can put the link below to a couple of them. But essentially you need to measure from the very top of your tank to 1 inch at the bottom, okay? So mine's a 20-inch high tank, so I've got a 19-inch sensor. Yep. So what I need to do is drill a hole in the tank just to allow this little component here, so it's not that big a hole, okay? And then this will rest on top of the tank. This will go to the sensor. It's pretty simple, really, all in all. So I'm just about to do that, installing that. So as this is an over-the-wheel arch tank, it's not a rectangular tank per se, but you still need to be able to sense the level. So I'm wanting to just use this main body section. And I've just found an X marks the spot in the middle of that pretty much. It's going to be at the back here where most of my inlets and outlets are. And so it feels like a good place to do the drill hole. As I've had to cut out and drill out a few holes, there's quite a lot of filings in there. So I'm actually going to go and find a hose and flush out the tank before I start sealing it up, installing the sensor and installing the tank. Okay, so before I mount this, obviously I've drilled the hole and I've checked that the float fits in. So you need to drill a hole the size of the float. Right, pop it in and put it in the direction, and you check that it's the right height. Obviously you put it in the direction that your power is going to be, so my power's in that direction, and then I'm marking the holes. I'm going to pre-drill them before I put the gasket and actually drill the pieces. So sensor mounted. You can't see it inside, but it's mounted all the way to the bottom. This is going to be the power to the gauge. Hey, good morning. Welcome back. So I'm actually in the middle of my water tank installation, and I realized that I really need to start installing things like my range and my instant hot water heater. And the instant hot water heater has both propane and water plumbing to it. And so as I've started the propane installation, that's ready to go. As I've started the water installation, that's ready to go, but it's got nothing to plumb into. So I'm starting that here today. And what I want to show you is what I'm doing here. So I'm trying to take some of these things step by step because it's a bit harder for me because I've only got my 2 hands and a tripod, so I can't have someone filming me so easily whilst I'm doing them. But let me show you what I'm doing here. So that's what we've got here, okay? So this is my XL instant hot water heater, becomes highly recommended. And so what I've done is I've just laid everything out. What's going to need to go, what clearances I'm going to need to get these on. Do things need to be attached? Some of these can be attached in place. Some of them are going to need to be screwed. I need to make sure they can be screwed after this is attached because it's going to be harder to get to the actual attachment pieces, right? So this one does have to. It's an elbow from this 1/2 inch to shark bite, right? PEX. It's a shark bite PEX connector. I'm going to have to screw that one in. Now, importantly, what I want to show you here is a few things. With this one comes this one piece that has a gasket in it. They say it's very, very important, that gasket, because this isn't a flared connection. This is a straight connection. So this must have a gasket, okay? And this thing goes to a 1/2 inch flare. Okay, so this is the propane inlet. Gas input, water input, output, water input. Okay, so we know what they are. Gas input. Right? You need to use this yellow gas tape, right? It's Teflon tape, just like the very familiar blue or white tape, blue container white tape that you use for plumbing. It's important to get this and get a good quality version. It's actually a much denser Teflon than the water plumbing. So get the right stuff. It's cheap, get the right thing, okay? So I've put that on the gas inlet, and then both of the water inlet and outlet, I've used the white stuff, okay? And that helps to seal against leaks, obviously, that's the primary purpose. It also helps to hold it in place. So I've done that before I'm actually going to do the installation of this into my cabinet. And then I've got all these pieces lined up. This one I'm going to screw on now that it's got its sealant on. And they say with these, just don't over tighten them because you'll start stripping things. And they say I think this outlet is something really important. You don't want to strip it because there's like weights and bull stuff in there that are to keep it working properly. So you just need to follow the instructions, which I've read very in detail. And I'll probably get a tiny bit tighter than hand tight on this one. But I'll load this one and then I'll install the unit. So I've installed this one and this one, and now I'm going to go install the unit. Okay, so I didn't show you me actually doing the install. Again, it's tricky in these tight spaces with one set of hands, but I'd already outlaid where this was going, but I had to measure and remeasure and remeasure because in here I also have a loo sliding on these sliders. Need to check that fit, and I also have the sink above here. So this is what's been installed, everything I had laid out. I installed the actual thing, and then I've installed these main connection pieces. This is the plumbing and a ball valve for here. This is the outlet of the hot water. This is the inlet for the hot water, which I wanted to put a ball valve on again. And everything's ready for the PEX. These are shark bite fittings here, so everything's good to go to start the rest of the plumbing. Hey, good morning. So I want to show you where I've got to with the plumbing and yeah, what I'm going to be up to today. So what we have here, we've got all of the plumbing to except for this. I had to get a piece yesterday, but all these are set up to connect over here. And what we've got, and what you haven't seen is another blooper, which was that I installed that pump and the accumulator tank in the wrong order, because there's not freaking instructions for a lot of these things. I looked everywhere and nobody told me that this needs to flow in on the left side of the tank and come out the right side. So I had to remount these, and all that is actually part of the wiring that I've started to do too. I've just potted it over there. So otherwise in here, this is all my inlets. Okay, that's going to be the gravity feed inlet on the right, and this pipe at the top is the pressurized inlet, which means I can just put a hose on that. At the very bottom is the air exhaust. Okay, really important, because as you're putting water into the tank, you need to be pushing air out of it. It's also an overflow function too, okay, as in if you overflowed it, it will flow out there. Okay, and so otherwise that's all good to go. My back panel is in place, my wiring is in place. I started doing some electrical wiring, which is very exciting. This one here, this is just a little short flow filter. They recommend that on the inlet to the pump for the reason of not getting particulate into the pump. And then that's one of the silencers, and this is the other one, which I need to determine where it's going to go, right? Otherwise, I've dismounted the tank because it's just going to be easier for me to get in and out of here, because essentially what I'm doing now is I am going to be doing the PEX and the shark bite stuff today. And part of the reason why I can do that is, let me crawl in the back here, is that I have mounted the instant hot water tank. Yep, I showed you that. All of those fittings are ready to go. All the holes are drilled, and that part of the cabinet, and then that part of the cabinet to get the PEX in and out. And because I am plumbing for a hot water here, as in here, eventually here, and out the back, I'm going to have, yep, you heard it, 2 hot and cold showers here, as in hot and cold water for my sink, hot and cold water for my shower, which you'll see eventually, and hot and cold water at the back. But it's actually only 2, because the hot and cold water for the sink and the internal shower are the same, and I just need to work out those little pieces right now. So this is what we're doing today. Okay, so this part of the plumbing is the PEX and shark bite. I've decided to do it that way. Most people end up using PEX as at least part of their plumbing components. Shark bite because it's super easy to install, apparently. I'm about to find out. And so what I want to show you is a few things about the tools today, this part of the plumbing project, and then how to work with PEX and shark bite. So here's today's tools. PEX pipe. Now, one thing to understand about PEX is it comes in red, blue and white. It's exactly the same pipe. We as humans like to color code things, and so red PEX is for hot water, blue PEX is for cold water. Some people like to do their whole plumbing installation in the white. Fine, I'm going to do it like this so I know what's what. Yeah. The other thing that we need is obviously PEX components, which this is just some of which I've got. Okay, straight pieces, T-junctions, pieces that go to threaded components because I've got other types of plumbing lines, and then we have ball valves. Yep, and then many other pieces. Then we have essentially what's called a ratchet cutter. There's different versions of this, but it creates a very straight, clean cut of the PEX, which is what you want. And then we have this little contraption that does 2 things. You can actually spin it around the end of the PEX after you've cut it to make it really clean. It's got a little cutter right there, yeah. And secondly, it has a depth gauge here. This is a little depth gauge that you stick your PEX into and then run your Sharpie around so that you know that it's inserted to the depth it needs to be, yeah. The only other thing I need today is the trusty tape measure, which is always fantastic. And that's what we're working with today, because obviously I'm going to be measuring distances which to cut my PEX. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. So here I am at the job site, and that's my water wheel well here where I'm doing the plumbing today, and through to the front of the van. But I think the thing to know about any installation, but plumbing, is there's, as they say, more than one way to skin a cat, which I've always found a very disturbing term, concept. Because firstly, who skins cats? And who skins cats in many different ways? Very disturbing. Anyway, back to concept here. The concept behind it is there's many different things you can plumb things with. I could have chosen copper piping. I could have done the whole thing with hose. And as it happens, I've got a mixture of hose, I've got a mixture of silencing hose, I've got a mixture of plastic connections. And SharkBite's really cool because they have some components that are SharkBite on one side and threaded male and female on the other, which is super helpful if you're moving between plastic components and the brass components of a SharkBite. And so this is what I'm just working out now before I start cutting any of the pecs. What I'm doing here is I've got all this set up so that this pipe here runs straight from the water tank into here and into the pump and then the accumulator tank. So from the accumulator tank I need to get the cold water into two locations. I need to get it here to the front, the back, and then I need to get it threaded through to the front of the van. So what I'm looking at is I've got a threaded female component here, SharkBite on the other side, and then I'll have a little piece of PEX in between that will go to this junction, so that from this one here I can come straight to the back of the van, and the other one I can take through to the hot water heater and the cold. Okay, there's going to be another junction inside of that box. So that's just decisions you make all the way along. You're just constantly making little decisions like this. I think that's where I'm going to start today. Another thing I want to note here is as I'm now moving from plastic components to brass components, open threaded plastic, I'm going to start using water plumbing graded Teflon, not the joint sealer. Okay, so this is what I need now to actually seal that joint. Okay, that's what I'm going to be doing as I move between plastic and brass components. Okay, and already a change of plans. Yep, so accumulator tank here, little U-bend to a female threaded end of a PEX SharkBite component to SharkBite PEX to the T-junction. So what this means is at this end I put the Teflon tape because it's going to go to the brass fitting. On that end, on the male side, you always put this stuff on the male end so that it doesn't get inside the pipe. Yep. That goes outside the accumulator tank. Here goes. So just showing you what I'm doing here for my first cut. On this SharkBite connection here, this elbow that went from threaded to SharkBite to a T-junction. I just want to see approximately where I want to put it. Okay, so I want it to go to about there in between the pump and the accumulator tank, just because it's tight position. And then I measure pretty much from that edge to the same edge on the other side, okay, to get the length of PEX that I'm going to cut. And that's smack on 5 inches, okay? So I'm going to do my first PEX cut now. I'm showing you this piece in detail because this is what I'm going to do for every single length and elbow of PEX. And so firstly I'm measuring the actual PEX to 5 inches, marking it with a Sharpie right there. Sharpie mark. Yep. And then I get out this guy to look at how to unhook it again. Okay, you pull it out to bring it back. And then what you try to do is just go really straight as you can. And it's a ratchet, so it's going to keep cutting incrementally. So what we have now is I'm smack on top of that mark, and then it starts to cut. There we go. A super clean cut with my PEX ratchet tool. And there's my first length of PEX. Teeny weeny one. Yeah? And what's the next thing I do? I grab this little gadget. This, as all my PEX is 1/2 inch, which I forgot to mention before. It's plenty for this installation. I pop it inside here, okay, right to the depth. Grab my Sharpie and mark that edge, okay? See? And do the same here, same on both sides. This is so you know you've inserted it deep enough. And I'm going to do that on this side. And then we have 2 marks. That is the depth to which you should be inserting your PEX pieces into your shark bite. I'll show you this one up close before I insert it into that. So what I understand is, and I'm about to learn a lot about this, is we simply grab the PEX like this. So you're going to see this little piece here compress. Okay, I'm sorry, you can see that it's going to compress. So I'm going to press it in. That's the piece that grips, and this is the kind of thing my hands aren't good at the moment. Okay, so I pressed it pretty hard, and you can see it went through to its line. So that's actually installed. That's how easy frickin' PEX is. Frickin' cool, okay? And now I'm going to do it on this first piece, and that's exciting, very exciting. And it still spins in its location if you need to spin the component. That's super cool. All right, now I'll do this side of it. This is actually the first installation into the van itself of PEX. There we go. There it goes. My goodness. First PEX and shark bite components installed. And I'm not going to show you that every time now. Okay, pretty basic. What's cool is this pivots if I need to, whatever reason, change that direction. But that should be, see those little lines, the little black lines, means I've inserted it to the depth required. And it's exactly where I wanted it. And I'm going to continue my installation. Okay, so I'm going to show you where I'm at. So I have plumbed from the accumulator tank here, okay, to the cold water. It splits here to go in both directions to the front of the van, and then back here I've actually attached it to one of the silencers, and that will go back here to the back shower, hot and cold shower. Okay, and as you can see also I'm just getting another PEX piece to put the hot water back here too. And then I'm going to show you the front part of that. All of the piping just runs through here, through the back of the cabinetry. I've drilled holes for them to slip carefully through the back here, okay? And then it comes out here, and it's super simple. It goes, the cold water comes in, and then they both split with a T-junction here. These two will go to the sink up here, hot and cold, that then also powers the shower. And then otherwise here, this just goes to the components, the inlet and the outlet. This is the inlet, which I have a ball valve on, and a couple of things here. Just making sure you're always checking, like I had to put a little T-junction here to make sure this little hatch, which has double D batteries, which is what the igniter is on this particular unit, could come in and out. That's happening, which is important. And then also I had to make sure things like these were working. So that's the ball valve for the gas. This is the ball valve for the water inlet. I'm going to want to be able to turn them on and off as need be. And otherwise, this will go back in place. And that's super simple. And then this is ready to be plumbed to the sink. And at the back, we're just ready to plumb the second shower. So this is where we're at. So here I am under the right rear axle and the right rear tires. I can't speak upside down. I've been upside down today under here, and I saw, I think it was 70 Savage, I'll give him a shout out, that there are these little plugs that are already in place up here that I just popped out, And then when I went inside, I'll show you in a second where that leads to. And what this little 1/2 inch pipe is, I've just put a simple 1/2 inch clamp with a metal to metal, super simple. I literally just poked it up through that hole, and then it poked up through right by the side of the water tank. And this is going to be my overflow. Okay, if there's overflow for any reason, you need to make sure that it finds its way out of the van and not floods the van, right? So that's what this is for. And it's one of those things that I would get poking from the top and it wouldn't find the hole, but when I poked it from here up that way a little bit, just up to the left with the curve in the pipe, it came straight out through the hole behind the curve in the wheel axle. So I was super excited. Okay, so here's where it came out. I'm gonna get in behind you as much as I can, okay? It came out through behind the axle here. There's a tiny little hole there. And it just poked itself out through it. And then I'm just gonna bring it through and then I'm gonna string it up so that there's a curve in it. And I'll show you when I get around to doing that. Just wanna make a few notes as I'm about to remount the water tank into here. I've got these cool ratcheted straps that are strapping it into places, and then I've just got these E-rings that are attached to here and here and here and here. Obviously you just got to find 2 spots that work in your setup, and I will mount the tank and then secure down the ratchets to hold it in position. They afford 2 things. They hold it still, and it's very heavy when it's full. It also bows when it's full, so this helps stop the bowing a little bit. And then after that's in, I'll also be attaching this top piece, which will create another securing of the tank. And the water tank is installed. All of the components are installed. In the back here, that's the drain with an on-off valve, gravity feed, that's the overflow at the top, this is the pump, okay, goes through to all those pieces here, and then this is going to be the last piece. This is what this is hanging out for. This is the hot water. The cold water is already installed to the back, but the hot water, I'm just going to put a piece of wood back here, and that will be the back shower. But we are largely complete.